Okay, the topic which we are going to cover is maps. Maps are generally studied with collection, but they are not part of collections. Sometimes people get confused and they think that maps are also part of collections class only, but that's not the case. They are a separate entity, and nowhere in Selenium you will be requiring it. Maybe while writing certain utilities, while creating certain logic, or uh, writing certain algorithm, you might use maps. And especially in interviews, people ask a little bit of map, that have you worked with map and what all you have covered. So that's the reason I'm covering it up. Okay, now talking about map, what is a map? See, try to understand it is in this way, that when we started array list or linked list, at that time the index we used is integer index, right? You have 0, 1, 2, 3, and that is a continuous index. Okay, now in case of maps, it will be like there will be an index. We call that index as key, and then there will be a value, that will be a value only. Okay, now this value can be of any data type, be it be it integer, be it string, be it boolean, anything it can be. Similarly, you can have key with any data type. Okay, it can be integer, key can be integer, this can be string, this can be string, this can be integer, and so on. Okay, so in the list, when I have to identify any element or I want to fetch any element, generally what I do, I get that value based on the index, or in normal arrays also you do the same thing. But in case of maps, we have keys and then their values. When we have keys act like uh, customized index. Okay, so that's a brief in about maps, how maps are created. Let's quickly see that. So I'll just open your project and let me create a new package with name datewill, and in this I'll create one class and I'll name it maps example. Let's keep public static void main checked. Okay, so here first of all I'll create a map. Okay, so map is generally is the one which you have to take from java.utils. Okay, here I'll put key can be anything, say for example key is integer. Similarly, value can be anything, let's say string. Okay, create a map, let's say I'm creating a map with name hash map. So it's again same, this map is an interface. Okay, and rest other are classes. So this is a class. Okay, similarly this one is a class and the remaining one is a class. Okay, so here we have started this interfaces now, so you can create an instance of map, name it anything, and then you can initialize with uh, any one of the implementing classes. So there are three classes which implements map. One is hash map, second is linked map, and third is tree map. So here it will be, I will start with hash map. Okay, so here you can see I'm just giving the data type of integer, I mean key. I'm also giving the data type of value, and then I'm naming it, and then you're putting new is to instantiate, and then so again you will see there is no size which we are mentioning. So when we have to put value, how will you put? It will be like hash map dot, instead of get, now there is a value, there is something known as put. Okay, in lists and in sets it was add, whereas in maps it is put. So it is hash map dot put, then give the key, say for example key is 1, and the value will become anything in string, say for example anyone. Okay, or maybe something, maybe I'll just give employee number, some employee number, and then a value, the name of the employee. Okay, so I'll just copy it. Okay, any random number. Then here, okay, so like this, it will be like one value will be integer and second will be a string because we have mentioned that way. Okay, so when you have to get the value, so this was how will you put the value, right? Now when you have to get the value, what you'll do? So system.out.println, say for example you want to get hash map dot, you want to fetch some value, so I'll say get, and then here you'll give the key. Key will be, say for example, 123. So when I execute, you'll see the corresponding value got printed. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in case of less than array list or linked list, the index was 0, 1, 2, 3 and it was a continuous number. Here you can put your index, it's just like an index only. This is one number which identifies this particular value. Similarly, this 123 is a number which identifies this Sandhya value. Okay, so uh, it will act like a customized index corresponding to it. Whatever value you want, you can get it using the method called get. Okay, so why this is used? Generally, this is used because remembering a customized value is always easy. Say for example, here I'm using integer value, so it might be difficult. But let's say I start using some string value here. Okay, maybe I'll just say some nickname to some users, and then based on that, I want to get what is the value. So that's actually easy. Okay, now talking about what does this hash map do. So just like your hash set, hash maps also has this same thing. Like if you iterate over it, you will see that the values which are coming are in random order. See, first Saurabh is coming, then Sugu is coming, and then Sandhya is coming, and then Jishan. If you'll see, when I was putting the values, it was these two values were other way around. But here, if you'll see the values which are coming after iteration, or you can say when you are fetching the values, the order is not maintained. Okay, so this is one thing with the hash map, that the order is not maintained. If you're not worried about order while iterating, then you can go ahead with hash map. Okay, I'll show you how to iterate over it. Okay, so it will be maps dot entry. Here we have integer, and here we have string, any temporary. So this is how you will iterate. So as in all other for loops, we enhanced for loops, we were first mentioning the name of the or data type, and then we were giving one temporary variable. Say for example, I'll give a name user colon, and then give the name hashmap dot entry set. So what does this means? This means that here you are telling the data type. So you are specifically telling that for a map, the entries, I mean the data type for entries will be, key will be integer, and value will be of type string. So this is what you're mentioning by this. Then user is a temporary variable. Then for which hash map you are actually, for which map you are actually doing this. So hash map dot entry set. Dot entry set means it gives you all the entry set. So if you hover around it, it says returns a set of view mapping contained in the map. The set is backed by the map, so changes in the map are reflected in the set. So basically it will start giving you values one by one. Okay, so uh, and then let's say I want to print them. So if, say for example, I'll say uh, key is uh, maybe user dot key. Okay, user dot get key, and then if you want value, so I'll say and value is, say for example, user dot get value. Okay, so if I execute this code, you will see uh, key is this, value is this, key is this, value is this, and see the order. The order in which you have entered is not the one in which you're getting while you are iterating. Okay, so that's all about hash maps. Any questions here? I mean, that is what is required
So
for us. Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Sandhya.
yeah, but here we just have like four values, then we can give like any number to print it out, right? But in real time, there will be like millions of records. Then how can we use this one?
Not millions of record you'll have, but yeah, whatever records you will
Maybe
have.
more.
See,
Uh,
try to understand it in this way that this key will always be unique. So here I just to give you an example, I took this. Just consider where you can use maps. Okay, maps will be used where key is unique, and based on that your value varies. Like one example where I used was I was working on a utility where I was reading all the test cases from my test management tool. I was using something known as test tracker, and that test tracker used to export all the test cases in Excel sheet, and then we were reading that Excel sheet. Now, if you take the example of Excel sheet, or this especially this test cases, in that the test ID is something which is unique, and then corresponding to that we have a test case name, right? So this test case ID was something which was behaving like a key, and the value of that I mean, or you can say the test case name was something which I was putting in value. This is one example where I used maps. So what I did, I just read that complete Excel sheet and put everything into map, and then I was creating a report out of it. So getting the idea when where it will be used.
so I did not understand like what is the advantage? What are the advantages of this maps
Advantage
than the list?
advantages
Yeah.
advantages is very simple. In case of lists, you have index. Here you have a customized uh, index. Okay, so just think the similar situation that I have to read all the test cases where I have a test ID and I have a test description. How will you manage this type of data in any other data structure? Can you think of any way?
Okay.
Getting the point. Similarly,
Mm-hmm.
consider one more example. Let's say you want to read all the employee IDs and their corresponding employee names. So do you have any data set where you will be using or storing this type of data? So no, the only data type you have in that case is maps. So we'll be using maps in such situations.
Okay, and the order is maintained here or no?
In hashmap, order is not maintained. Generally, when you don't worry about the order in which you have inserted, then you can go ahead with hash map because they are little fast, or you can say less memory consumption is done in case of hash map as compared to linked hash map, or tree maps. Okay, so I'll go to the other one, then I'll show you. So if I go to the next one, that is, I'll just rename it to hash map. Right click,
Gaurav,
refactor. Yeah, Jishan.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The format you are telling about it's the key and the value,
Mm-hmm.
the data type.
Mm-hmm.
So you are mentioning integer and string
Mm-hmm.
within those tags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So string is a data type and
Yeah.
integer is also a data type.
Yeah, so you can give any combination here. It can be anything. Like it can be string string, it can be integer integers, it can be integer string, it can be any data type actually. So what was your question? I didn't get your question.
Can you go to that
Yeah.
Notepad plus plus?
Yeah. Yeah. So I said key can be of any data type, value can be of any data type, but you have to mention what data type.
Okay, so there can be one data type as
Yes.
well, or there
Yes.
can be two data types.
Yes. It won't be like you can store any type. I mean, you can store a string, integer, or boolean at a one go. What I meant was that they can be of any data type means they can be of integer, they can be of string, but whatever you mention, that only you can use. There is no data type in Java which can store all the values other than object, instance of object class.
Okay, and now you give example of the test cases.
Hmm.
So we cannot type all the IDs and the title of those test cases. So how we will get it from that test management tool and print it?
Yeah, I was just telling na, what we did was that test tracker, test management tool which we had. Almost all the test management tool has this feature of exporting into Excel sheet. If you have seen, because
Yeah, that is fine.
I have worked with multiple test management tool, and every tool provides this feature of extracting test cases in some Excel sheet. Okay, so what we did, we just extracted all the test cases from that test management tool, and they were in an Excel sheet. Then we read that Excel sheet, which had all the fields. Like the first field was test ID, second field was test description, and then we had pass, fail, and so on. Okay, so what my requirement was that I wanted to generate a report using that Excel sheet in an HTML format. This was my requirement. So what I did, I just read that Excel sheet. Okay, I created two maps in that case. First map was where my this key was whatever the data type of test ID was. So for me, it was a string only because test ID was like AX001, something like that was there. Okay, so I read.
No,
Uh,
that's fine. But how did you do that? Like right now, you're explicitly mentioning 143 578 and so
oh,
on,
okay.
etc. So
Okay. So that you will understand once we'll cover Excel sheet. I mean, reading Excel sheet once I'll explain you, na, that time you'll get. So what we did was, from an Excel sheet, when we are reading the value, you'll be getting in two variables, right? So I used one for loop. Okay, say for example, here I'll say for int, um, not int, yeah, int. Let's say int I equal to 0, I less than equal to 10, then let's say I plus plus. Okay, so what will be this? Let's say this will be 1 for now. I mean, if just recall, I'm reading from an Excel sheet. Okay, so I'll put this as 1. What will be this will be the number of rows in the Excel sheet. So once you'll learn about Excel sheet, that how to read data from an Excel sheet, there I'll tell you how to get number of rows in an Excel sheet. So I'll get number of rows in the Excel sheet, then I'll iterate one by one, and then when I have to put values, it will be like hash map dot put. In the key, you will give the name of the variable, um, which which is reading the first column. Okay, so that might be an array. So array will be reading the values one by one, so you'll will put here, and we'll get the key. Similarly, there will be another array which will be reading the test description, so that will put here. Say for example, here in the key I'll put 1, sorry, I. In the value I'll put maybe something, maybe sorrow, then maybe like this. Okay, so I just appended I with it. Okay, so when I execute this code, see what we are getting. We are getting now the values in this are these many. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then sorrow 1, sorrow 2, sorrow 3. So like this, you will just iterate over a for loop. Okay, this will be starting from 1. I mean, this will start from 1. This will be the number of rows. Then here you will put a variable uh, in which you have put the test ID, and here you'll put the variable in which you have put the test description, and that way you can read. Okay.
So can you have multiple columns, like you are now just displaying two ID and the
So I'll give
string.
you
So
how I did it. So there are a couple of ways you can do that. Okay, but yeah, for hash map you can have only two things: key and value. So what we did in that case, our requirement was to generate a test report that my according to my
hmm,
test case, whether they are pass or fail. Okay, so what I did, I had three columns. Okay, first one was test ID, second was test name, and third one was pass or fail. Now I cannot store all the three things in one go. So what I did, I used one map to store test case ID and test case name, and then I use another map to store test case ID and then status of it. Okay, so when I was creating a report, HTML report, at that time when I had to print the status of, I mean, when I had to print the status, so what I was doing in my first column of HTML, I was directly putting the key that can be from any map, this map or the second map. Then in the second column, when I was putting the value, I was using first hash map and then the value which I put in the first column. Then when I was putting the status, I was using the second map and I was getting the value again from the first column. Okay, so that's how I printed all the three things. This is when this is good when you have I mean, just two or three columns, you can go with it. Okay, but if you have, let's say, seven or eight, then you have to think some other way. So this is one logic I applied. Getting the point?
that is fine. But whenever you type map,
Mhm.
and then within those tags it says key and value.
That is iteration, right? That is one way of iteration. Okay, you were saying about this, using for loop, you put key and value. This is what you're saying?
No, no, not follow, not follow.
Uh-huh,
It
uh-huh,
go up,
yeah.
and just type map
You saying this?
outside of the iteration.
Okay, I'll try to explain you what I was saying. You're still confused in the example I gave, or you have any other question?
I have another question now,
Yeah, yeah, tell me.
because we will do the practical thing. Then that example will be get clear. If you go up,
Mm-hmm,
then line number 10.
mm-hmm.
So here, when you type map, so it give you key and value. If you
Yeah,
type it again, yes.
yeah, it gives me a key and value. So key can be of any
So
data
it,
type.
why then key and why string is value? Both are data types, right?
So I am just saying that you can put anything here. I mean, whatever you feel like. It can be both strings, it can be both integers, it can be anything. So,
Then what is the meaning of key and value?
okay, okay. See, what I am trying to explain, I mean, what this data type is, this map is, it stores values in pair. Okay, think of any pair. Say for example, your employee ID. Uh, what is your employee ID? I mean, you have it in integer or in string.
Integer.
You have an integer, so you will create a map in which your key is unique. Key will always be unique. Key cannot repeat. Key cannot be duplicate. Okay, now the organization you're working for, in that your employee ID is something which is unique. It is not shared by anyone else. But name, just consider the name. There can be two people with same name. There can be two people with a name Saurabh in a company, right? So you cannot directly use Saurabh. So that's the reason we generally assign uh, some other value which can be unique. Like we assign uh, employee ID to the users, right? So employee ID is something which is unique. So that's what we are putting in key. That's why I created the data type of this as integer. Okay, so this key is something which is unique, and value is like its corresponding value. An example is test case ID and the test case name, test case ID and the status of test case, pass or fail. Another example is in an organization employee ID and the name of the employee. Now the company I'm working for me, this employee ID is also a string. We have like ACS 001 or ACS 021 and so on. We have our employee ID in this way. So that is a string for me. So when I'll create a map, I'll put the key as string and value also as string, because value is name. Okay, you can have an example where you can have a key in string and can have a value in boolean. You can have an example where both can be integers or both can be byte, both can be short. Anything. It depends on your example. Only thing you have to remember is key will be something which will be unique, will not repeat. Value can be a value corresponding to that particular key. Now got
Got it.
some
Thanks.
idea? Yeah, okay. No problem. Okay, so this I was just giving you the next example of linked list. So in case of linked list, sorry, not linked list, linked maps, linked hash maps. Okay, so I'll just rename this part. So right click. Okay, let me just rename like this. Linked hash map. Rest everything will remain same. Nothing else changes. Okay, so here we'll rename it. Right click, rename, refactor, rename, and it will be uh, linked hash map. Okay, so rest everything is same in linked hash map as well as in tree maps. The thing which changes is the way you iterate. Okay, so here if I iterate, you can see here the order in which you are inserting the value is maintained. See the order in which you are inserting. So first I inserted those 4 values and then I inserted all those 10 values. So here also you can see when I am iterating this, all those 4 values first got printed, and after that whatever value you inserted, that got printed. So this is in case of linked hash map, the order is maintained because when it is storing, it stores the address like uh, I mean, first value stores the address of next and so on. So there is a linking in between. That's the reason it saves like this. Okay, so this is second. Nothing much differences here. Rest everything will remain same. Uh, okay. Okay. So any questions here? Okay. So I'll move on to the third one. Third one is when you have tree maps. So I'll say copy paste and we'll name it as tree map. Okay, in case of tree map, again this will change to tree map. Okay, and we'll rename it to Alt Shift R. Okay, so I just rename it when I execute it. So now you can guess what it will be. It will always be in sequence, and that sequence is based on the key, not based on the value. If it's an integer, it will be like alpha in ascending order. If it will be like some string value, that then it will be in alphabetic order, but always in increasing order. Okay, so yeah, that's all about tree maps. Any questions now? Okay, just one more thing. I forget yesterday as well. Here, if you want to change the order, there is a way. You can say collections dot uh, just a second. I guess some incorrect collections got imported. Yeah, so it will be collections dot reverse order. Okay, so when you execute this, you will see that the order now printed as reverse order. Okay, reverse order of key. This happens with when you have to reverse the order. So same thing you can do in tree map. I mean tree sets also. So yesterday we saw tree set, right? I'll just go to yesterday's class. We saw tree set example. In tree set, when you're defining this, you can just put reverse order. So the order which you'll get now will be the reverse order than what you inserted. Okay. I mean alphabetic. If it's an integer, then descending order it will be. Okay. Any questions here?
So do we have a random option?
Random we have anyway. We have hash map, hash set. So they gives you random value.
Okay, got it.
Got it? Okay, fine. So that's what you have to learn. Though they are very big topic, vast topics, you can learn uh, from uh, from some books or some video tutorials. There is one person known as uh, the Cave of Programming. There is one YouTube channel with name the Cave of Programming that has a very good uh, video recordings for collection class. So he has covered almost 14 videos only on collections. So you can go through them if you really want interested in learning it in detail. But for Selenium, these are more than enough for now. Okay, because I have not used even what I just explained. We just use it for iteration. So that I'll show you where all we use when we are doing Selenium. You might use these maps and lists when you are writing certain kind of utilities, but those utilities you'll write only in later stages of your project. Okay, so moving on to the next topic which is left in your in your class was let me quickly open Qtech Hub. So if I go to your Java topics, what we uh, had planned. So the first one is done, second one is done, data types is done, operators is done, these two are done, classes and objects are done, introduction to object-oriented, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, access modifiers. One this class modifiers is left, I'll take this later. Abstraction is done, data hiding is done, abstraction in Java, abstract class is done, interfaces is done. One is the string handling is left, I'll take this now. Then exceptional handling is left, and that is very important. Introduction to classes, array list, linked list, hash map, sets and maps. These all are done. So we have three topics left. One is this class modifiers, second is string handling, and third one is exceptional handling. Okay, so let's quickly see string handling. This is something which is a good topic to cover. So I'll just come here, right click, new class, string handling. So in string handling, what all we have to study is how you will handle strings in your project. Okay, so string is a class which provides us which is a data type, which is a non-primitive data type. Why it's non-primitive? Because it's not created as a primitive data. Okay, like we have integers, or we have long, we have short. They are not stored that way, but it is stored in the form of objects only. So string is a class. When you're creating its instance, you are actually creating its uh, object and then storing value in it. Say uh, I'm saying string some name, my name, okay, and I put some value to it. So this means that a variable with name my name is created, which can store a string type of value. So for example, I'm storing the value as Saurabh. Okay, so Saurabh, let's say Saurabh Dhingra. Okay, now this string class provides us many methods, okay, which helps us in dealing with whatever value you have. Okay, so when you hover over it, what it says, the string class does not represents the character string. All string labelers in Java such as ABC are implemented as an instance of this class. Okay, so yeah, um, let's talk about the methods we have in this. We are more interested in that. So this is the name of the string instance I created. When you put dot, you will get all the methods. Okay, let's see them one by one. See, we have one method called length. What does this method do? It gives me the length of the characters we have. Okay, so when I execute this, so you can see it is giving me 15. Okay, so number of letters in this string we added here are 15. It also considers the white spaces we put. See here, when I added few more white spaces, the value it took is 20. Similarly, if you add some more white space at the end, or at the start, so whatever is there in between these double quotes, that will be taken care. So here you can see the value is 26. Okay, so just remember that when you're calling the length, white spaces are also considered. Even the white spaces in the start, or I mean in the trailing and in the end also, are considered. Okay, now there is a method known as trim. What does this method do? This method removes white spaces from the end and from the start. Okay, so here you can see when I'm calling this length method, before trimming and after trimming, see the difference. So before trimming, you can, okay, my bad. It will be my name, equal to my name dot trim. So when I execute it, you can see that before trimming, the number of characters are 26, and after trimming, the number of characters are 20. So what it did, it actually removed white spaces from the start and from the end. Okay, so any questions till now? Okay, so moving on to the next method, my name dot. There is a method, let's say, so we have seen this length, we have seen trim. Then there is a method called character at. Sometime what happens, you need character at some index, maybe fourth index. So what is the value at fourth index? I'll just put 4. We can print this. So you can see the character at 4 is printed. Why does it printed A? Because we have already trimmed it. Okay, so if after trimming, if you'll see what the value is, so I'll say system.out.println, I'll say my name, uh, if you'll just print, you will see that there is no white spaces in the start or at the end which is printed. Whereas the same thing if you print before trimming, if you'll see, you will get some white spaces. Okay, so after removing white spaces, the value at fourth character, so it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So this is how it is. So the character, this index always starts from 0. Okay, so this is one of the method, that is character at. Any questions till now? Okay, so moving on, what all we have, what other methods we have. So it will be my name dot. Okay, so uh, then there is, these are just characters. Code point, I don't know what it is. Okay, code point, I am not sure. Okay, when you have to concatenate two strings, then you can use concatenate method. Then ends with, to verify whether a particular name, say for example here, ends with, I'll put GRA. So what does this tell? If the, what it did, ends with GRA. So system.out.println. Okay. So what does this method do? This method tells you whether your string is ending with the characters you are entering or not. Okay. Why you need sometime, I'll give you an example. Say for example, you want to verify the sheet you are reading, whether it is in correct format or not, whether uh, the Excel sheet you want to read, whether it's actually an Excel sheet or not. So how will you verify? When you are reading the name, an Excel sheet will have an extension of .xlsx or .xls. So if you can simply say, if the file name dot ends with uh, .xls, that means it's a correct Excel sheet, right? So that is that is one of the example where we can use, and this method returns a boolean value, true or false. If it is returning true, that means your string ends with the desired character, otherwise not. Okay, so that's what ends with is. And so if I execute it, you will see it will return a true. So it returns a true because my string ends with a GRA. Okay, so this is about this method. Then one of the most important usage of string is to breaking a string into string array. Okay, like here, I'll create a string array. Maybe I'll call it ARR or STRARR, STR maybe. Okay, so what I'm doing is, what is the name of the my string? It is my name, so it will be my name dot. There is a method known as split. What does this method do? This method splits your string into two parts. First one, uh, uh, based on the regex you'll pass. What is regex? Regex is something which you can use to identify. So for example here, um, okay, I have many white spaces, so I'll just put one for now. Okay, so here if you'll see this name Saurabh Dhingra, in between this we have one white space, right? So I'll just put one white space here, and I am saying whenever you get a white space, split that. Okay, so when you okay, so I'll iterate over this. So it will be string some temp variable over str, and then I'll just print them. So system.out.println, is this temp. Okay, so when I execute this, you will see Saurabh and Dhingra got printed. How? I'll quickly show you this in debug mode. So when I execute this in debug mode, you will see here there is one variable with name my name. So as soon as I executes this statement, you will see str variable is created, and if you open it, it has two values with two index 0 and 1. str of 0 has Saurabh and str of 1 has Dhingra. Okay, so how does this happen? This happened because we splitted this name based on this regex, and regex we used was a white space. As soon as it encountered the white space, the value before it and the value after it, it got splitted into uh, two different variables, which then we stored in a string array. Okay, so that is how you will split any equations now. And one of the example for this I can give you is this part, that is breaking your uh, breaking your data into string array. So the example is, uh, think about a CSV file. CSV file is a comma separated file, right? So comma separated file means all the values in that are comma separated. Okay, so when you're reading any CSV file, you can simply say break uh, all the values with the regex comma. Okay, that will create an array for you which will have values, all the values in a array. So that is one of the example. Okay, so any questions now? Okay, so there are few more methods, you can simply go through them. Okay, I don't think any one will be which needs an explanation. There won't be any method which needs an explanation now. Like you will have, so substring is like uh, based on the starting index and the ending index, uh, you can get the substring. So for example, you can say from 0 to uh, index of, no, what we call string dot index. So there is a method known as string dot index of. Okay, let me see. I guess here it won't come. Okay, it will be like this. Yeah, I got it. My name dot index of, let's say, white space. So what I'm doing is, in an integer variable, let's say int, for now I'm just taking a variable I, 0 to I. So what I'm doing here, I'm saying give me the value of from the starting to I. What is I? I is the index of white space. Where is white space? In Saurabh Dhingra, where is white space? In between these two, right? So as we have already trimmed this, so the white spaces from the start and the end will also be gone. Okay, so we have white spaces at this, so it will give me the index of this, and I'm saying from 0 to this index, whatever is the value, return me. So substring means whatever is the value. So if I execute this, see, I got a Saurabh. Okay, so this is how you can use this substring. And like this, whatever methods are remaining, you can just go through them one by one. They are very simple to understand. Okay, so yeah,
Can you
that's
spell it again? I couldn't get it.
this point you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, just give me a second. Just give me a second. Okay, so what I was saying that this here, my name is having a value Saurabh space Dhingra. Okay, so what I'm saying, I wanted a value from the static index, that is from 0th index to whatever white space we have at the end. Okay, so what I said, from the starting means 0, and then I want wherever the first white space is, till then whatever is the value, give me that. So how will I tell my system that give me the value till first white space? For that I need to get the index of that. And how can you get the index of white space? There is a method known as index of. So name of the string dot index of, just pass the white space. What does this do? This will give me the index of the white space, which will be, if you'll just print the index, if I execute it, this gives me 7. That means whatever value from 0 to 7 you have, it will give you that. So see what value you have. This will be at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th is white space. So in between 0 and 7, whatever value you have is getting printed. Clear, Jason, now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so that's all in strings. Now you can just go through the remaining string methods and see what if you face issue in with anyone, do let me know. I'll help you in that. Okay, so that's all about strings. Now the last topic which is left for us is exceptional handling. That's the only topic that's left in Java for now. We'll also have file handling that we'll learn with uh, frameworks. Okay, so let's have a break now for some time, and then we'll continue with our last topic, that is exception handling, though I'll not be able to cover completely because it needs almost 1.5 hours to complete exception handling, but whatever we can we'll do. Okay, then next week we'll go back to Selenium. 4 classes, most at max of 4 classes will be required for Selenium, and then we'll start frameworks again. I mean, then we'll start with the frameworks. Okay, so let's have a break for some 7 minutes. Okay, so see you after 7 minutes, and then we'll continue with exceptional handling. Okay, so let's continue with the last topic, that is exceptional handling. Okay, so what is an exceptional handling? Uh, so let's start with what is an exception first. An exception is some unwanted event which occurs during the execution of a program or code that disturbs the normal flow of execution. So for example, you're trying to access a file which does not exist. It will throw you an exception known as file not found. Then let's say you're iterating over an array, and then the code you have written is such a way that you are trying to access one of the value which is out of range. Out of range means, let's say that array you created was of size 10 and you are trying to access its 11th element which does not exist, which is out of the range. So it will throw you an exception known as array out of bound exception. It is always important to handle all these exceptions to save your code from irrational behavior. The mechanism of handling runtime error or exception is known as exceptional handling. See, if we'll not do these exceptional handling, which I'm going to teach you now, uh, these exceptions which occur, they can give you a very irrational behavior. One of the example which we can take from Selenium is that if your code is running properly and then all of a sudden some exception occurred. So what happened will be that uh, from somewhere your code will, I mean, you'll get an exception and your browser will not be closed in that case. So that is one of the example. What I'm trying to say is, let's say um, you're running a Selenium code and your code is written line by line, and somewhere some exception occurred. Maybe you were trying to access some element and that element was not there, so an exception occurred, and the code to uh, close the browser was written after that statement. So if that is failing, your browser will not close. So there will be some unopened instances which will remain, which is what we don't need, we don't want. So that is one irrational behavior, one of the example of irrational behavior. Okay, so we shouldn't do some kind of things so that if some exceptions are occurring, then also things should remain normal. Okay, so that the mechanism of handling runtime error or exception is known as exceptional handling. So what is this runtime error? We'll see now. Some of the exception occur during user error and some due to programming error. Based on this, we have classified the exception into three categories. First one is errors, second one is checked exception, third one is unchecked exception. What are errors? Errors are something which cannot be controlled by user or programmer. They occur at the runtime due to some uncertain conditions like heap memory gets full or stack overflow occurs. So errors are something which cannot be controlled by user. You don't have any I mean any say in that. Say for example, all of a sudden some power failure occur. So that is something which you cannot do anything in that, right? So that comes under this errors. So we are not worried about those errors much. So we'll leave this. Then we have is checked exception. Checked exception is something which can be caught at compile time. Say for example, you're right when you start writing your code and you're trying to access a file, which any file, your compiler will prompt you with an exception saying file not found exception is not handled. Okay, so this is something which your compiler tells you even before you start. It will tell you before you execute your code. Okay, so that comes under checked exception. We will see many examples. One of the example I can give you here as well. See, when I say there is a method known as thread dot sleep. Okay, if I put any value, it will see I have not executed the code, but at the time of compilation, this Eclipse do as soon as you write the code. Okay, so here you can see it is prompting me an error, an exception. What does it say? It says unhandled exception type interrupted exception. So this exception is expected to throw some exception. One of the example is this interrupted exception, so we need to handle that. That's what this means. Okay, so that comes under that comes under checked exception. So checked exception are generally taken care uh, by compiler. So just like the example I gave, that will be available to us. So we can simply go ahead and do whatever you desire for. Then comes the checked exception. Sorry, unchecked exception. Now, what is unchecked exception? Unchecked exception is something uh, which occurs at runtime, which cannot be caught at compile time, and they are actually occurred during the execution of the code. Logic's error are also considered as runtime exception. So if you're getting any run any if you have any logic error, that also something comes under this. Okay. Now let's take an example. So example is for unchecked exception. The example is let's say there is a array of size 10, and in the code you're trying to access its 11th element. The example I gave some time back. So that time your code will not give you any error. I mean your compiler will not give you any error, because according to compiler you are following all the syntaxes, you're following all the things. But when it will execute, when you'll run this code, at the runtime, it will get to know that 11th element does not exist. Okay, so it will just simply throw you an exception known as array index out of bound exception. Okay, so this is one example. There can be many examples of it. Uh, to understand or to handle exceptions, we should be we should know about the hierarchy in exception classes. So let's understand the hierarchy in exception classes. Okay, so there is a long list of runtime exception, and how will you get them, and how will you get to know which exception uh, says was what. So for that, just go to Java docs, Java documentation. Okay, here we have is Java documentation. Search for exception here. So whichever exception you're getting, just select that, because each and every exception inherits a class known as exception. So I'll just go here, not here. In this also there is one runtime. My bad. I'll go back. Yeah, runtime exception. Okay, so I'll go here. See, um, in Java, uh, all the classes, I mean, whichever class you have, the hierarchy always starts with an object class. Object class, you can say, is the first class in Java. All other classes inherits object class. So object will be the first one. Then you have something known as throwable. Throwable, if you go to this throwable, you will see that throwable has two known subclasses. One is error and second is exception. So I'll go to exception because error is something which we cannot control. So I went here in the exception. Now this exception has these many classes as the known classes. Okay, if you look at, there is a long list. One of them is runtime exception. So if you go to run, here is the runtime exception. All other are like checked exceptions. Okay, we are more interested in runtime exception for now, so I'll just go to runtime exception, and these are the classes which are directly known subclasses of runtime exception. So this is the long list of subclasses which handles runtime exception. Okay, um, so this is the hierarchy. This is what I was explaining here also. The hierarchy starts with an object class. Then we have throwable. Throwable have two things, error and exception. Then we have exception. Exception has runtime exception, and then there is a long list of checked exception, which I just show you. So we are not interested in any of them. We are more interested into runtime. In runtime, I showed you that there is a long list. This is a list. Now you can just click on anyone to understand what does that mean. Say for example, we have arithmetic exception. So I'll just open arithmetic exception. What does it says? It says throws when an exceptional arithmetic condition has occurred. For example, an integer divided by 0. So we cannot divide an integer value with 0. It throws you some exception. So one of this comes under arithmetic exception. Like this, there is a long list. Whatever exception you occurs, come here, check what does it says, and then you can handle it. Okay. One of the example is array index of the bound, which I was just mentioning. So array index is not there. There will be index out of bound. Yeah, here is the index out of bound exception. If you go there, what does it says? Throws to indicate that index of some sort, such as an array or a string, is out of range. It has two known subclasses. One is array index out of bound. Second is string index out of bound. If you'll go to array, you will get what does array means, and like this, you can just know what exception uh, what does an exception means and what does a particular exception do. Okay, so there are some of the classes which I've just mentioned here. They are frequently used. One is arithmetic exception, I just mentioned. Index out of bound. Illegal argument exception. Illegal argument exception means, let's say your method takes integer value and you are supplying string value to it. That comes under arithmetic exception. Class cast exception is like when you are incorrectly typecasting a class. That comes under typecast exception. Okay, so all these things, if you want to read about them, just come here and just search for that particular exception and read about it. Okay, so is it like one of the important one is this null pointer. Null pointer is the one which says which occurs whenever some of your instance is pointing to null. Okay, so like calling the instance method of a null object, accessing or modifying the field of a null object, taking the length of null, or and so on. So if you do any one of these things, it will throw you a null pointer exception. Okay, any questions, anyone? Okay, so moving on, this is whatever we discussed. That was what are the different types of exceptions we have. Now let's talk about exceptional handling. So how will you handle them? So we got to know this that yes, exceptions occurs. Now let's talk about how will you handle them. So to handle exceptions, we have multiple things. One of them is try catch. So let's talk about try catch. The code which is expected to throw some exception is written in a try block. Catch block catches a particular exception and does some task. There can be multiple exception blocks. Uh, these blocks handle exception in hierarchy but in reverse order. So I should have said here that there can be multiple catch blocks. So these blocks handle exception in a hierarchy but in reverse order. Okay, how does they do? I'll just show you. Okay, so so I'll just create one class. Let's say I'm calling it exceptional handling. Okay, and I'm keeping this try catch, keeping this main enabled. And before I show you try catch, let's first see an example where uh, when where exception occurs. So let's say I'm creating an integer array. Let's say its name is arr equal to new int, and let's say the size I'm giving is 5. Okay, and I'll start putting value in this. Say for example at 0th index I'll give a value, let's say 5. Okay, I created an array with say size 5, okay, which has a value from 0 to 4. Now I'll um, use an answer for normal for loop, int I equal to 0, I less than equal to arr dot length, and then I plus plus. Now here if you look at the logic I'm writing, do you see something here? If you see properly here, the logic I'm writing in it, here index starts from 0, fine, index starts from 0. I'm saying I less than equal to arr dot length. What does this arr dot length return? It will return you a 5 because this is the length of the array. Okay, so that means this is going to return 5. That means my code will go from 0 to 5, and it will try to print fifth ARR of 5 also, but ARR of 5 does not exist. So if I execute this code, you will see I get an exception. What does that exception says? This exception says that Java lang you get array index out of bound exception. So this is the, and this here it will always mention what exception you're getting, name of the class, and then colon it will also give you the message. So it says array index out of bound exception occurred at index 5. From where it is coming? It is coming from a class called exceptionhandling.java, and line number is 16. So if I click on it, you will go to line number 16. So from here this exception is occurring. Which exception is occurring? Array index out of bound. Okay, so this happens when a normal exception occurs. Any questions till now? Okay, so next what I'll do, I'll put this code in try catch and we'll see what happens then. Okay, so generally how will you write? Just type try, press Control spacebar. There is the second option, try catch. Just select this. It will give you a snippet of try catch. Paste it back. Okay, now here uh, what does it means? The code which is expected to throw some exception, put that into try. Try is like it will execute the code, and whenever an exception will occur, your code will come out of that from that line and will go in one of the catch statement. There can be multiple catch statements. Okay, now the catch statements you're putting, say for example currently I'm just putting one, and here I'm mentioning which type of exception it can catch. I'm saying it can catch exception type of exception, the one which belongs to this class called exception. Okay, so if we go here, we when we were discussing about when we were discussing about the exceptional handling, there we said this exception and all the runtime exception and all the checked exceptions are something which are inherited by exception class, or which inherits exception class, right? So that means this exception class is capable enough of handling all the runtimes. In runtime you have a long list, so here is the list. So this complete list as well as all the unchecked exception can be handled when you're putting exception. Okay, so I'll simply put it here, an exception occurred. So here you can do whatever you wish for. Let's say I'll just change it to ERR just to show it's an exception. And see, it's printing an exception occurred. Now it's not printing the stack trace which you were getting earlier. Why? Because this time when an exception will occur from here, the code will come out of it and will go in one of the catch statement. Okay, here I have written only one catch statement which can catch all the runtime exceptions also. So that's why this array index out of bound was catched here. Okay, now any questions till now? Now I told you that you can have multiple catch blocks. Okay, but just remember the hierarchy, that it should always be reverse order in the sense, see here, I'm saying index out of bound exceptions, and here I'll say system.out.println, uh, index out of bound exception occurred. Okay, so when I execute this time the exception which is getting printed is index out of bound. Okay, instead of the other one. So how does this works? It works like this. See, this exception is also capable of handling index out of bound. This index out of bound is also capable of handling. So how does this occur? In this try block, it will throw an exception. Whenever it throws an exception, it goes to catch one by one, and it can execute one and only one catch statement, not multiple. Okay, either it can execute this or either it can execute this. Now from here, when an exception occurred, it went to this, and as array index out of bound is one of the subclass of index out of bound, it got handled here. Okay, but if same thing, if you'll put below this catch, below this, and you save it, it will start throwing you an error. If you hover over it, it will say unreachable catch block. See what it is saying. It is saying unreachable catch block for index out of bound exception, as it is already handled by the catch block for exception class. Okay, so this exception class has already handled index out of bound. That's why this code will never reach here. It is unreachable piece of code. Clear? Any questions, Sandhya here? Jishan, I guess, has left.
No, sorry.
Okay, fine. So I'll just change it back to the other one. Okay. So this is about try catch. So just remember that when you're putting multiple catch statements, uh, think of the hierarchy. Hierarchy should always be from down to up. That is the least. I mean the one which is at the end should come at the first. Okay. So if you see, when I was telling you about this index out of bound, that time um, we saw that index out of bound has two more subclasses. One is array index out of bound, and second one is string index out of bound. So this array index out of bound, uh, if you need to add that, that will even come before index out of bound. So here, even before index out of bound, you have to add array index out of bound. Okay. So otherwise, say for example, here only, if I after this index out of bound, if I put array index out of bound, So here if you see, I have put array index out of bounds exception. What happened? Huh. It is throwing an error. What error it is saying? Again, unreachable code, uh, code of block, because it is already handled by index out. Because this index handles both. So uh, if you have put index above, whatever exception in terms of array index or string index will occur, that will be handled here, so your code will never reach here. As I told you that in the code, how it works is it always go one by one. First catch, then second, then third, and so on. Okay, so if you want to move, you will move it up. Now you can see no error. So here when you execute this code, see what executes. It executes array index out of bound exception occurred, because whenever an exception occurred, it simply went into this catch block. Okay.
So yeah, so what is the difference between index out of bound and also array index out of bound and something
Index
like
out
string?
index. So yeah, I'll tell you. Index out of bound is a superclass. Array index out of bound is a subclass. Okay. Index out of bound has all the basic methods which are being shared by array index and string index. So array index handles for the array, string index handles for the string. Okay, so today only we were discussing about the string handling, right? So if in string handling, let's say you put something, let's say you wanted to get index of, or say for example you wanted to get a character at 44. Okay, in the string Saurabh Dhingra, 44 character does not exist. So when you execute this, you will get string index out of bound exception, because you were trying to access one index of a string which is out of range. Okay, so uh, so what does it means? This is a superclass which has all the common methods defined, and their implementation is different in array and is different in string. Okay, so this is one of the best example of inheritance, where string index and array index have a common what do you call, class, superclass, which has all the methods implemented which are being shared by both the classes. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So after this we have few more things in exception handling, like we have finally block, we have throws, and we have throw keyword. Okay, so that needs another half an hour. So let's do it in the next weekend, next class. And next class, Java, most of the Java will be done. I'll also cover those two topics which are left, that is string, this static and final. I'll also cover them, and then we'll go back to Selenium, start with our Selenium topics. We'll try to end them in 2 weeks, and then we'll start with the framework part. No, not framework. We'll start with the TestNG. So 1 week I need for TestNG. Once TestNG will be done, then we'll start with the frameworks. Okay. So yeah, that's all for today. Any questions now?
Saurabh,